and by Kansas and Missouri combined, because there were people from that entire region of the world coming to join together, be joyous. And we watched that for hours, for a few hours in the anticipation of the event, and then the event. And then as it ends, it looks a little weird and scattered. And we go off the air, we start to see people running around, we see some people crouching down, and even the newscasters weren't quite certain what was going on. And Dave, you've worked in newsrooms far more often than I have, but to see an event go from sheer and utter joy for community to confusion to panic, it was a little numbing for me. And I've seen a lot, but you've been in those newsrooms, and man, that's got to be an odd change even for you to see the way it shifted.
Yeah, I mean the crazy part is like I had it on in the background, so I didn't I didn't catch it right away. And I had the volume down because we'd been on the air, and so I was just kind of walking around my house, and I didn't turn the TV off, and then all of a sudden I looked, and we were watching, by the way, and Coz, I think you were as well. I was watching KCTV, the CBS
Yeah.
affiliate in Kansas City,
Yeah.
because you and I both have, a software program that will allow us to be able to watch
Yeah.
some of the
I'm
locals.
watching it right now, Dave. I'm watching it right now and
Well,
continuing coverage.
well, and Scott Reiss, our buddy who works for KCTV, has just popped up and joined the program. Scott, first of all, we're glad you're safe. It dawned on me. I thought of reaching out to you yesterday, and I was like, well, I'm sure if something had happened, I would have heard news about it. But then this morning, I was like, I really should have reached out, man. What was that like yesterday, being there, and that must have been a little bit scary.
It wasn't as scary from my vantage point because it was the sort of the sequence of realizing what was happening in real time. One of my colleagues, Neil Jones, was close enough where he was actually getting ready to do a live shot, and you can see the video of like you hear the pop, 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 and then behind him, people are starting to run and scatter and scream, and so that must have been scary. I was at a vantage point, caddy corner to Union Station, and 4 stories up at a hotel. There's a large platform area, and we were broadcasting from there. So I was close enough to hear the gunfire, but never did it occur to me, oh my God, I'm in danger. So I think the scary part came later when you really realize exactly what was going on. First, you hear the gunfire and you're thinking, was that what I thought it was? Was it fireworks? Was it something else? And then you look down and you see crowds starting to sprint in one direction and then sprint in another direction. And it was strange because it looked like a lot of folks, law enforcement officials, started sprinting into Union Station on one end, and a lot of people, including the entire Chiefs cheerleading squad, were sprinting out of Union Station on another end. And so you're like, all right, this is definitely something. But obviously at the time, we had no idea what it was.
Yeah, Scott, that was amazing to see those men and women who protect us running towards things they didn't know about. I mean, it does even now numbs me somewhat. So the event happens. How long did it take for you? Because you were there yet not close enough. How long did it take for you to finally get word that, hey, this is a serious situation that has begun, and then you had to spring into action as part of the full team coverage that goes on for a parade?
Yeah, I mean, it was just so bizarre because we had been on air off and on for the previous 7 hours covering the parade, and we had just finished. I mean, this was 2 o'clock Central Time, and we were just going off air, and my day was done, and my 10 days of Super Bowl coverage were finally done, and I was gonna get out of there. And then all of a sudden, you hear this, and you're kind of thinking, maybe I should stick around for a minute. And so we were just watching it unfold. And it was probably about 10 to 15 minutes before we really realized the gravity of what was going on. It's one thing to see, you hear the noise and you see a bunch of people running, but you don't really know that anybody was actually shot. I mean, those things take time to come out and details to come out. So because we had reporters in so many different vantage points, we were able to glean information a lot faster, obviously, than we otherwise would have. But yeah, it was so bizarre in real time, and I stayed up with our crew on the platform there at the Crown Plaza for probably 45 minutes. It was maybe 20 before we got the word we're going back on air, and so our news folks there started, initiating the team coverage again. and then maybe another 20 or 25 where I said, hey, let me go down with, we had a spare camera guy there. I said, let's go down and see, what we can dig up and help out, because we had crews, but obviously the more bodies on the ground, the better in that situation. And so that's what I did. And I was probably down there for about 2.5 hours after that, doing, putting on my news reporter hat. It was very strange to be in that role, but obviously it was all hands on
Which
deck.
isn't what we got into this business for, is it? And
No,
not, yeah.
that's precisely why we got into sports, so we don't have to talk about death and destruction. But obviously, the situation warranted it.
Yeah, Scott Reiss, the sports director at KCTV, is a friend of the program and has been on many times. I was going to give you a break. I wasn't even going to bother you this week because I knew how much you've been working, and it's fine to talk about a parade, whatever. Last real news question for you on this topic, and then maybe the coach may have something sports related as far as the parade, but. I don't want any speculation. Obviously, it's terrible for anybody. But facts. What do you know in terms of facts? In terms of anything, the suspects, the victims. Is there any facts that you know?
So I'm going to be honest. All I know is what I knew last night. I woke up this morning and my wife had a medical procedure, so I had to take her directly to the surgery center. I came home, I walked the dog, I took a shower, I went back to the surgery center. I've not turned on the TV. I have not. I just wasn't in a mind frame where I wanted to dive back into that yet. So I'll get to it this afternoon. So I'm giving you nothing that probably you don't already know. Last I heard last night, it was 17 people at two different hospitals, so 17 total, and I believe 9 of them were children, which is just absolutely heart wrenching. And I think that 11 of the 17 were considered to be in critical condition. But honestly, and one had died as of last night, but there could be a massive update this morning, and I just haven't heard it yet.
Oh, Scott, that is such a tough situation. And
Yeah.
again, you have a job, but you have a life as well. You have a family with children, and you may have to address it with them. This is just such a tough thing, and
Yeah.
I don't even, I feel almost bad to ask any question beyond what
No,
we're
I
talking
mean,
about,
look,
right? Even like Chiefs related, they look like
I
they were
get it.
having so much
I get
fun.
it.
That's all lost on us now.
It is, and that's really the biggest takeaway I think from the media standpoint from yesterday is that, you can't do more of a 180 from just the absolute top of the mountain energy, joy, pounding our chest. Look at Kansas City, back-to-back champions. The nation is watching this incredible feat of, being the first team in 2 decades to repeat as Super Bowl champs. And then, not 5 minutes after the thing ends, you're all of a sudden hearing gunshots and everything just flips on its ear. And, and this is not a good look for Kansas City, when all is said and done. And so it's just, you talk about, like I said, the complete 180. It's really hard to reconcile exactly the difference between the first half of yesterday and the second half.
Scott, you mentioned the cheerleaders. Had the players exited before this happened, or where were they when this was happening?
Yeah, so I don't know for sure. Their buses were still there. So my sense is that they had not exited, but I don't know. I never saw the backstage, Union Station, the facade, and out front is where they had the stage, and it was facing the crowds and the media and everything else. I don't know. I'm guessing that Union Station as a day-to-day, entity was closed to the public during the event. So I don't know if the players were somewhere inside in a back room, just sort of waiting to go to the buses to get back to Arrowhead so they could, go home and live their lives. I did not see the players exit, but again, there were a few minutes between the time they left the stage, we were still on the air, and the time that this happened. So it's possible that they quickly, got out and got onto the buses, and then it was just a delay getting the buses out because of all the traffic. So I don't know exactly where they were, but again, I'm sure that those details are probably coming out today.
And I take it your wife and kids were not in
They were not
attendance
there.
yesterday.
Correct.
Which is the best decision ever.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man.
Thanks, Scott. Unless you have any more, I
Yeah.
listen, Scott. We appreciate it. You've been
Yeah,
through
no
a
worries,
lot.
guys.
There's a lot of emotions involved with this, so to give us as much time as you have is very gracious.
No,
And you
no
know what?
worries.
And I might tear up, but we're all friends first. And Dave and I had the same thought after not, we were all going to text you after not doing it, and then not. We didn't know. We were afraid that maybe you were affected.
Well, I
We didn't
appreciate
know.
that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and I understand. I mean, it's
Yeah.
such a strange out of body situation. So I certainly don't hold it
Yeah.
against you. It's all
Yeah.
good. And again, I guess because I know I was never directly in harm's way, I don't shake my head and think to myself, man, I could have been, that could have been me. But I guess realistically, had I been stationed at a different point, and
Yep.
like my colleague Neil was, and he was, maybe he was 100 yards away from it. I'm not sure the distance, but yeah, no, it is crazy to think anytime you have an event like that, you're always susceptible to a couple of bad apples and things going awry, and obviously that's what happened.
Yeah, and it has been reported that the one casualty that they've announced is was a member of the media by essence. She was a local disc jockey in Kansas City, according to the reports. So
Terrible.
All right, well, Scott, thanks for joining us on a tough day, man.
Sure, guys.
We're just really glad that you're okay, and we hope that everybody in Kansas City is able to recover that's been affected by this. It's going to change some lives for sure, and it's sad that has to happen in this country in this day and age.
It is indeed. It is indeed. All right. Thanks, guys.
All
right. Take
Scott
care, buddy.
Reiss, sports director with KCTV TV in Kansas City, and because there's not a great segue out of that. I'll just finish my thought on it by just saying that something needs to change. You can debate all you want what the politics are, and I'm not going to get into that because that's not what this show is about. But the fact of the matter is that somehow, some way, something needs to change because these things are happening way too often, and now you've got kids in hospitals that just went to go celebrate because their team won the Super Bowl. I mean, it really is absolutely devastating for everybody, and anybody who's a parent can feel that for sure.
Absolutely. I'm going to close by saying, listen, there are a couple of good Samaritans there who did things that not every human being is set up to do. There were some bad people in the audience that did bad things, but there were two really good people who tackled one of the people, then came in and helped. And then the wife of one of those two who knocked down the gunman, the alleged gunman, picked up the weapon and was able to get it away from the guy. So there are good Samaritans out there that need to be recognized, and there are good people in this. It's horrible what went on, but I want to also thank those who not only had the wherewithal, but actually did it, the gumption to do it. We sometimes wonder, what would we do if we were in that circumstance? I don't know if I'd have run down somebody with a gun and tackled them from behind and started, pumping them with fists. So thank you to those who are out there helping. And Scott pointed it out. Those men and women who are running towards the problem, not away from the problem. You are special human beings to carry a badge, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah, by the way, we don't know the motives, and I'm sure we'll find out because there's suspects in custody. I mean, I don't want to speculate on what the motives could be, but all I could say is, you're going to a place where there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of cameras. Not that there's ever a good time or place to do this, because there never is, ever, whether there's a camera there or not. But, on top of that, really? It infuriates me on so many levels.
Yep.
Anyway. All right, let's talk about some other things we've got coming up here today on the show.
Can I close it out with one last thing on this?
Sure.
This is according to the Kansas City Police Chief, Stacey Graves, who said that the event that happened at Union Station had nothing to do with homegrown terrorism or violent extremism. Instead, the shooting, quote, appeared to be a dispute between several people that ended in gunfire. That is directly from the police chief of Kansas City.
Well, first of all, why are you taking a gun to a Super Bowl championship rally? If it really was something that sparked up over a dispute, why are you taking a gun there to begin with? What part of you wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go watch the Chiefs celebrate their back-to-back Super Bowls, and you know what? I'm going to take my AR-57 or whatever the hell it was with me to the rally, because I think that seems like it goes well with my Chiefs championship hoodie that I just bought. I mean,
it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you know what? And I want to I guess I'll just in a weird way somewhat restate what I talked about, the two people who tackled the alleged gunman. One of them, a dad of two sons. He and his wife live in Wichita, Kansas. He said, I just wanted to score some dad points. I let my kids stay out of school. We drove from Wichita to Kansas City. I took the day off of work. I just wanted to be a good dad for one day. That's all I wanted to do. And he ends up being a hero. And we know too many people were affected by this. he saved even more from being affected by this. And gosh darn it, man. That's what sports does. It has people from Wichita driving to Kansas City with their family and having kids miss school. That was a big thing to me. Missing school to go to opening day with dad was a huge thing to me. Huge thing. I mean, that's why I get emotional. I mean, man, to hear that there are heroes out there like that is amazing to me. Good on you, sir.
And we don't really want this to be a big topic on the show. But
No,
we
wanted to do 5 minutes and end it.
Yeah, nobody wants this to be a topic in life. But if you feel like you need to talk about it, or if you by chance happen to be there and you've got a story that you want to share, we'd be interested in talking to you. 352-234-TONY, 352-234-8669. We do have a pretty packed show today. So let's talk about what we're going to get into. We will continue our spring training tour, which, by the way, we need to come up with a name for this. Or is spring training tour fine? I haven't really come up with a name for this.
Let me think about it. The LFG look around. the LFG MLB LFG MLB look around. I don't know. It's not working. It's not coming off the tongue.
Yeah.
Can we do hot stove, or is that some copyright thing?
No, hot stove is during the winter when they're talking about moves. Spring training is a whole different deal.
Yeah.
Well, the stove is very hot right now because it's hot in spring training. How's that?
No, that's not a good one.
That's
not a good one.
Hold on. I gotta see. I got a basketball buzzer here somewhere. I don't even know where it is. I'd be blowing that basketball buzzer right now. And here's some bowling pins. Oh, here we go. Here you go, Matt.
Mr. Sound.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, that's a long buzzer, by the way. Anyway, so we will continue our spring training tour. We're going to go from the best team in the National League last year, at least the team that went the furthest in the National League last year, to the worst team in the National League last year, and they're in the same division. So we're going to go from the penthouse to the basement with Drew Goodman, who is the play-by-play announcer for the Colorado Rockies. He'll be joining us coming up in about 20 minutes. So we're going to do these around around the 40-minute mark of the first hour of our show pretty much every day. We may have to tweak it a little bit here or there depending on the schedule of our guests, but that's what we're shooting for. So if you like baseball and you want to get the tour through the majors with us, make sure you're tuning in 40 minutes past in the first hour of the show. So it's either 1:40 Eastern or 10:40 Pacific or whatever variant in between, wherever you're listening. But the big news out of Colorado for a team that lost 103 games last year. By the way, because I looked at the standings, and I gotta go back and take a look, but there were 3 teams that lost 100 games last year. One of which, by the way, was the Kansas City Royals with Scott Reiss. I'm sure he's not even ready to start thinking about the baseball. But the Kansas City Royals, the Oakland A's, and the Colorado Rockies all lost 100 games last season. I don't know if that's ever happened. Has there ever been a year in which 3 different teams lost 100 games?
Boy, that is I'd have to go deep into the record books to see if that happened, but it was some abysmal baseball last year. If you were, you and I both a long time ago, but I'd done some work with the Oakland Athletics, and you keep an eye on people and things you like, and just because you were attached to it at one time, it was miserable last year. It was just miserable between the potential of them moving. Their ballpark sucks. They would get 2,000 people to a game, if that. I remember talking to some people involved with the organization, and they looked out, and there was one announced total, but you could count triple digits of people there, hundreds of people, and that's it. And it was just abysmal to watch that. But you're right, 3 teams losing a century's worth of games, man. That is some bad baseball all around.
Yeah. So anyway, the Rockies were one of those 3 teams, but there are a couple of pieces of news involving the Rockies that'll be interesting to talk to Drew about. Number one, I just saw that they announced yesterday that they are going to be streaming all 162 of their games this year as their new platform. That's going to be their base. Major League Baseball is going to produce it. They were, I believe, with AT&T Uverse, and AT&T Uverse, much like the Diamond Sports Group, a.k.a. Bally's, they've defaulted on some of their deals. Now Major League Baseball is taking over, And so we'll ask Drew how that's going to affect things. And then the other big news, and I need to look up her name, and it's a disservice. I should have it in front of me. But the woman who worked with the Rockies and worked with Drew Goodman for a long time, she got hired as the Oakland A's full-time play-by-play announcer earlier this week.
Yeah, she's primary play-by-play announcer, which leads me to believe they'll have some other people guesting in that role. And I believe her last name is Kavner, and
Jenny
she did.
Kavner.
There you go, Jenny Kavner. She did an awful lot of Rockies work, as you point out, and she also hosted a radio show on Sirius XM. And I listened to her an awful lot during the winter meetings because they were held. And I was in a group just talking, and she was in the group at the winter meetings, but I was never introduced to her, so I can't tell you that I know her at all. But she knows her baseball, I'll tell you that. There's no question. When I was listening to her from the winter meetings, she is sharp, came over and said hello to the people from what is the NBC Sports Group in Northern California. And so it's certainly an outside-the-box hiring, and it'll be fun to watch and see how she works with who I think is the most underappreciated analyst in the Bay Area and maybe in Major League Baseball. I'm a big Dallas Braden fan, and so she'll be working with Dallas Braden. That should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Dallas is a lot of fun. I mean, the A's have had, some great analysts over the years. Ray Fosse, God rest his soul, was in that role for a very long time, and he was fun to listen to. And then on the pre- and post-game side, you got Shooty Babbitt, you got Dave Stewart, and you got Bip Roberts, and it's a fun cast of characters they have rolling through on that side as well.
Yeah, they really do. And Dave Stewart, I don't mean to pick out just one guy in that, but Dave is instrumental in trying to bring a team to Nashville and trying to get an expansion team here. And I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. When the Athletics were looking to move, there were many people who said, well, ready-made. Nashville, right there. You can just move the A's to Nashville. And Dave Stewart grew up in Oakland, grew up an A's fan. All right. First game he went to was 1964 with his dad. He went to an A's game, and he remembers that. And he said, I could never do to my community something so evil as to rip the team that I learned to love the game through, take it away from them to bring them with me in Nashville. He goes, it would rip my heart out to do that. So it's interesting, people get attachments to things. Dave could put a group together and try to buy the Athletics or work with the current group and move them here, but he knows what it would do to that community and what it's doing to that community at this point.
Boy, Dave Stewart, for the youngsters out there who don't, have in their head Dave Stewart pitching, go to YouTube and pull up some of those, early to mid 1990s A's teams with Dave Stewart on the mound. I think about those great battles they had with the Blue Jays in the ALCS a couple of times. In fact, Coase, I was in Toronto. The first ever baseball postseason game that I ever saw in person was the 1989 ALCS. It was Game 3, I believe. Oakland had won the first two. Oakland ended up winning the World Series. They went on to play the Giants in the Earthquake Series. And I was in Skydome when Canseco hit a bomb in left field into the upper deck at Skydome.
Wow.
I mean, it was like 480 feet. He crushed it. It was.
Yeah, he didn't hit wall scrapers, did he? I mean, that guy, he would tattoo him. McGuire would tattoo him. Those guys didn't hit any cheapies.
Yeah, but back to Dave Stewart, his stare when he was on the mound and he was staring at the batter, I mean, it was in the neighborhood of the Mike Tyson pre-fight stare. That's how impressive it was. It was daunting just to see it on TV, let alone standing in the box looking at it.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. We did a show the other day, and who would you pay to see? Or no, we were talking to your friend from Arizona, Tim. Is it Tim Ring, right?
Yeah,
Tim Ring. And we were saying, who would you pay to see? Not who the MVP of the league is or other stuff. Who's the guy you pay to see? I can tell you that when I was living in the Bay Area, and my buddies and I, at the time, I was just starting out. I was a backup with the Warriors. I was doing some CBA stuff. I was working at KMBR. And one night, the Red Sox are in town, a weekday evening, and it's the Red Sox and the Athletics, and it was Dave Stewart on the bump against Roger Clemens. And I took Bart from the city, took it all the way to the Coliseum stop, got a ticket in the cheap seats, and I was doing a pregame show with Dave a couple of years ago, and they were playing. The A's were playing the Red Sox, and I said, "You go back into the late '80s, early '90s, Dave." I remember a night when I took Bart, came to the Coliseum, and I pointed up to where I sat. I was in the third, that upper deck, way up there on the third base side, and I watched Dave Stewart and Roger Clemens go at it, and he shook his head, and he goes, "Roger and I had a lot of good battles, my friend. Roger and I had a lot of good battles." And so I remember that. He was a guy. Dave Stewart was a guy I paid to see on that particular evening.
Well, think about that. Think about how lucky we are that we've gotten a chance to, to do pre and post game shows with some of these guys.
I know.
It really is unbelievable. And by the way, the nicest humans ever. Unfortunately, we lost one of them last year with Vida Blue. But,
so sad.
But
So
Vida
sad. What a
was
sweetheart.
great, and it is a shame what the A's have become, and the fact that they are, how we're getting on to A's baseball. People are looking for the change the channel button as quick as they can right now. But in any case, the A's once were a proud franchise, and they had some pretty good stuff going on.
True.
And the Rockies were once a proud franchise. The other thing. And I know we're going to do our questions with Drew. I do want to ask him, too, about Todd Helton finally getting in the Hall of Fame because, I covered the Rockies for a while in Denver, and Todd Helton, he wasn't necessarily beloved by the media there in Colorado, but there's no question he brought it all the time and was a fantastic talent. So I'm really happy to see that he finally got into the Hall of Fame as well.
Yep, I agree with you. Todd Helton, a University of Tennessee guy, if I'm not mistaken.
He was the backup quarterback to Peyton Manning. Didn't you know
There you
that?
go. Yeah, there you go. I knew there was Tennessee ties there.
Yeah.
Because I'm as a Tennessee Volunteer season ticket holder in football, I'm now starting to get the baseball emails about going to games there, and they did send me the Todd Helton. But he was a great baseball player. I know that Peyton Manning's backup is a pretty good thing, but he's a pretty good baseball player.
There you go. All right, we're taking a timeout. We got a Matt Fowler sports update coming up, and then Drew Goodman will be joining us, and then top of the hour, Drew Goldfarb. It's the day of the Drews here on LFG on the Tony Bruno Sports Network.
So they're going to Seoul to play some preseason games with the Dodgers?
Are they? I didn't see that. But if that's true, that's good knowledge. By the way, Coach, your mic is still hot. So if you can go in your settings on your Mac, I think, and it would be the best thing to do. Just slide it down.
Let me try to do that.
I can't lower you anymore, man.
Yeah, on your input on your settings. So go to settings, sound, and input, and there should be a
I'm
slider
going
bar.
settings, systems. Come on, settings, systems. There it is. Go to sound.
Yep.
I'm on sound.
And then input.
Come on. Clicking on sound, and it's not. There it goes. Click on input. Got ya.
And then your mic should be the USB mic, and then there should be a slider for you to be able to bring it down.
Yeah, there is. Boy, it's way down, I'll tell you. Let me lower it a little more. There, I got that down about as low as I can get it. And
Okay.
Hello, test. Can you hear that?
It sounds a little better. I don't know why it's so hot. Matt, the other thing you could do is you could lower on loopback. You can lower your slider of the whatever it is that's 1B. I think it's
How's that?
probably
Testing
1B.
3, 2, 1.
Whatever that slider is, that's the output to Nextcast. So you can tweak that down a little bit, but that's going to lower all of us. But that might stop it from peaking out on Nextcast, like Robin was saying yesterday.
That's the one output to Nextcast, or is that the one B?
No, not one output to Nextcast. There should be a slider right under that. What is it that's right under that?
Chrome Riverside.
Chrome Riverside.
How's
Lower
that?
one down maybe to like 95%.
Can you guys hear this?
Yeah, I can hear the sound.
Yeah. All right. So
No, are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing
Yeah.
you.
Is that loud?
I mean, it's still louder than us, but it's better than it was yesterday.
How about now? Can you hear me?
That's better. Whatever you just did, that's better.
Huh.
Okay, we got like 3 minutes, guys. Hey, Dave.
All right.
So I have a little bit of an update in terms of the casualty count on the parade stuff.
Unless it's 100%, no speculation. If it's
No,
factual,
it's from ESPN. It's from
okay,
ESPN.
but keep it brief. We don't want to go too far on that.
And then we covered it, but you said about the woman with the A's. I got that in there.
No, dude, that's like 3 days ago. That news.
All right. Well, I'll just go with the Kansas City stuff.
You could do the Steve Wilkes thing.
Yeah. Okay. I don't even have anything written for that, but well, no. I'll say that they let him go after a year.
Okay. Are you rolling the music or am I?
I will.
Real men of genius. Real men of genius. Today we salute you, Mr. Over-the-Top Carb Counter. Mr. Over-the-Top Carb Counter. Brushing aside such follies as work and family, you wisely adopted carbo counting as your primary pastime. I'm crazy for carbos. From breakfast through dinner, you tirelessly record every precious carb, hoping it might all add up to.
All right. One more commercial after this, then the rejoin.
Was that artichoke you ate 13.5 carbs or 13.6? Better look it up while you help yourself to another package of bacon. So crack open an ice cold Bud Light, oh Count of Monte Carlo, because
Oh, no, that's not right. They're not going. Rockies aren't going.
You sent Drew the link, right, Matt?
Bud Light beer, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri. Bud Light presents Real Men of Genius. Real Men of Genius.
Matt, did you watch Concussion last night?
I did. I know. Yeah, I bought it and it sent it to the LFG email address. Yeah.
Slick back hair, a sharp
Coz, I don't know why you're. Have you done a speed test? Are you on a hardwire?
look that oozes.
I'm not on a hardware right now, but I can be if you want.
Well, I'm wondering if the hardwire would help because you do
Okay.
look like you're on the moon landing again.
All right, let me
Dave,
go.
is it-
Let me go
Dave, is it
hardwire.
Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes, defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Oil leak? What oil leak? That puddle under the car?
That's it, 49er fan. Know your team.
All that horsepower.
Look at you, 49ers.
So crack open an ice cold Bud Light, Mr. Peddler of the sheet metal, because when life hands you lemons,
This is ridiculous.
Bud Light beer, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome back to LFG. Let's go on the Tony Bruno Sports Network.
It's the bottom of the hour, or close enough. Time for your Tickscape Studios Sports Update with Matt Fowler.
Authorities in Kansas City said Thursday that the mass shooting that left one person dead and 22 injured at the Chiefs Super Bowl celebration appeared to stem from a dispute between several people. And the 49ers have fired Steve Wilkes, the defensive coordinator, after one season. For all of your news and updates, tune into the Tony Bruno Sports Network on the TBSN app. Now back to Dave Benz and Jim Cosmore. This is LFG.
All right, back here on the Thursday edition of LFG. And we can sink our teeth into that maybe for a second before Drew Goodman joins us from Denver, Colorado to talk about the Colorado Rockies as we continue our tour through spring training. Pitchers and catchers have officially reported for most teams. Coz, Steve Wilkes fired by the San Francisco 49ers as their
Harsh.
defensive coordinator after just one season. So the 49ers next year will be on their third defensive coordinator in 3 seasons. And, I mean, I don't know about you, but I wasn't sitting there watching the Super Bowl screaming at my TV thinking that the defensive coordinator was to blame for the reason the 49ers lost the game.
Yeah, in fact, do you know the David Bowie song, Panic in Detroit? This is Panic in the Bay. This is Kyle Shanahan trying to point a finger at someone else while everyone knows they're pointing fingers at Kyle Shanahan. All right, that's a BS move by a guy who's starting to panic a little bit. Steve Wilkes was getting patted on the back so much during that Super Bowl coverage about what a great job he was doing, how he was mixing it up against Mahomes. First half of that game, he had Mahomes tied in knots. Didn't you think Mahomes was next to not effective in the first half of that game? Aside from the bomb that he hit late and then they ended up fumbling the football, Kansas City did. Wasn't the defense all that? Plus the defense lost maybe their best tackler and the linebacker, and they're still in the game, for crying out loud? I think that's a panic move by Kyle Shanahan. It's a look over here, don't look at me move for Kyle Shanahan. I am stunned that they are making that move and they're getting rid of their defensive coordinator. And yeah, the last two have gotten head coaching jobs. This guy gets to go to the soup line.
Well, the soup line. I don't think he's quite going to the soup line, but he
I
might
think he'll be okay.
He might be leaving with some parting gifts. I don't know what his contract situation was, but it is. I mean, it is crazy to me that they parted ways with him. The 49ers defense, listen, were they as good as everybody thought they were going to be this year defensively? No, but they were still pretty impressive. The only thing I was
17 and a half points a game, Dave.
Yeah.
17 and a half points a game.
Pretty damn good.
If you want to split hairs, the only thing I would say is I don't really feel like Steve Wilkes really found a way to unleash Nick Bosa, but how much of that falls on the shoulders of Nick Bosa? Not that Bosa had a bad year, 10.5 sacks, but coming off of 18.5 the year before and then getting the big money deal. And I watched Coase every 49er game this season, and there really didn't seem to be, forget about just the playoffs and the Super Bowl. I mean, even in the regular season, I don't remember really ever watching a 49er game this season and feeling like Nick Bosa was a major factor in things. And,
Interesting.
So that could be a smaller thing. Like, hey, you didn't really maximize Bosa to the best of his abilities. But again, and the other thing with this is we don't know what was going on behind closed doors. Was there some kind of rift between Kyle and Steve Wilkes that led to this before the Super Bowl happened? And maybe,
Well, I can tell you what it was. I can tell you what that problem was.
Okay.
And that Kyle Shanahan wanted to run a particular type of defense, the same type of defense that Robert Saleh did, and that D'Amico Ryans ran. And he said, Steve Wilkes, you're coming in here. We run this type of defense. You'll coach this type of defense. And Steve Wilkes said, well, I didn't coach that defense when I was a defensive coordinator. I have a different defense that I use. But okay, if you want me to do that defense, I'll do it. And it was midway point of the season in which Steve Wilkes even said, I'm still trying to learn this defense and how they want to run it. So I think that was the biggest thing. But that's on Kyle Shanahan. Don't hire a guy for ulterior motives, whatever the reason was that he chose to hire him, if he doesn't want to run your defense nor understand your defense and ask him to teach it. Listen, I'm not hiring a substitute teacher. I'm hiring a defensive coordinator. Kyle Shanahan was hiring a substitute teacher to run someone else's, school classwork program and not letting them teach themselves. And so I put this on Kyle Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers definitely trying to change the narrative. But the bottom line is that I go back to what you said yesterday, Coase. Kyle Shanahan might be Andy Reid 2.0 being in San Francisco. He may end up winning multiple championships and being a fantastic NFL coach. I mean, he's already a fantastic NFL coach. I mean, we are splitting hairs here. The guy, you can't say that he's not a fantastic coach when he regularly gets his team to either the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game. The problem is getting you over the hump. That's where everybody wants to get to.
Right.
But, if the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan were to part ways, Kyle would have many suitors in lining up to be able to get him. But
Absolutely.
But
he'd get a job tomorrow. It's
kind of like the monkey on his back. Like, I remember when Steve Young, the last time the 49ers did win a Super Bowl, that 94 season, they win it in 95, the 95 Super Bowl, January 95. I always hate that it overlaps, by the way.
Yeah, I know. It makes the discussion clunky, doesn't it?
Yeah, but the big narrative going into that Super Bowl was Steve Young. Can he get the monkey off of his back, because he had always kind of fallen short of expectations, and that's kind of what Kyle is facing right now. But yeah, Kyle, there's no question. This definitely reeks of, whether or not it's the reason. Only the people that are involved know the reason that he was let go, but it certainly reeks of, hey, don't look over there, look over here, and that's not a good look for the 49ers, and even as a fan, I'm saying that.
And it's hard to do, but he's looking smaller as the week goes on. Everyone has the hot button right after the game. You made the wrong call. You decided to take the ball first. Your explanation is a little questionable. I wanted that first possession after the first two possessions. Okay, let's say we give you the benefit of the doubt, and then we hear, you know what? your offensive players didn't know what the rules were. They didn't know what they were supposed to do. Then we hear the backtrack. Oh, no, we had prepared for that from Kyle Shanahan, and yet we still have players saying we didn't know what the rules were in overtime. Then you have the quarterback, Brock Purdy, saying, yeah, just before the overtime, my quarterback's coach, Brian Greasy, told me what the overtime rules were. So it wasn't addressed. Clearly it wasn't, even though Brock Purdy might have been trying to cover for Kyle Shanahan, he actually exposed him as not having prepared his team for what the overtime rule was. So he looked smaller and smaller as that started to move along. And then he comes out with doubling down, saying, I made the right call on wanting the ball first and wanting that first possession after 2 because that's when you could win. He looked bad doing that. And now he looks bad getting rid of his defensive coordinator. It's a really bad. It was a horrible Sunday, and it's continuing to get bad as the week goes on for Kyle Shanahan. If I'm the owner of the 49ers, I don't fire him. But I sit him down and we have a serious discussion as to why we only get here only. You get to the Super Bowl. That's a pretty good thing. But we continue to have problems. Why is that? And in this case, why didn't our guys know? And I need him to look me in the eye and tell me.
All right, well, we're going to table that discussion.
No, let's continue it on with our guest.
I'm sure Drew Goodman really wants to get into the conversation about the 49ers and their decision to get rid of Steve Wilkes. But Drew has joined us. For those who are on the live stream, you can see he's popped into our virtual studio. Drew, it's been a minute, man. How you doing, my friend? Is Drew hearing us? I don't know if Drew is hearing us.
Drew.
Hey, Drew, you hear us, buddy?
Drew heard us. I could hear when he first turned it on.
Yep.
When he first opened it up, I could hear he had it on the speakers because I could hear a little bit of the feedback. But I don't think he's hearing us right now.
Should we
want to text him, and I'll take over for a couple minutes?
Should we maybe have Drew call in on the
You can maybe just try calling Drew, Matt, on your phone and put him up on Roadcaster.
That would be better.
And then you can, let's see that. Let's see what happens because I don't know, for whatever reason, we're not. Those who are watching the live stream are seeing Drew adjust his camera and adjust everything. But unfortunately, he is not popping up audio-wise. So
okay, one moment.
All right, Matt. So hey, real quick, because we are going to have to get into a discussion, though. What is the right thing to do in overtime, like in the NFL? Is it right to take the ball first? Is it right to have the ball second? I know in college football, a lot of teams want to have the ball second because they want to know what they need. Do they need a touchdown, or can they just win it with a field goal?
Right, exactly. And that's a good question that leads from one to the other. But to stay on the National Football League one, there was a change in overtime rules. So it isn't like it used to be where each team got a possession. If you scored the second time, you won it. That's a good discussion. And the funny part about it is, as much as I criticize Kyle Shanahan for not preparing his team, I don't know if I have enough information to decide what's right. Kyle Shanahan said, well, the analytics said you do what we did. But then he also admitted that it's a really small sample size that we have. So we really don't know what's best. I know this. I know in the case of the team that got the ball second, they won. So if that held true in the past, if that continues, I mean, it seems like it continues to hold true. I understand Kyle's reasoning, but just based on the sample size we just saw, it seems like the team with the second possession works.
Right, and I feel like, and because we haven't seen this really before, it's kind of uncharted waters, right? But I feel like, it's Patrick Mahomes. In the back of your mind, you probably feel like he's going to get a touchdown. So I'd rather personally, and again, this is hindsight 2020, right? But I'd probably rather be like, let's give him the ball first. If he does get a touchdown, then we know we're in 4-down territory. Whereas you don't know that you're in 4-down territory when you take the ball first because you're like, well, maybe our defense will stop him. So let him go first. Maybe your defense gets a pick or gets a turnover. But I think it puts more pressure. It takes some of the pressure off your offense, as crazy as that sounds, if they know they're in 4-down territory and they've got to get a touchdown.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing that what stood out to me about what you started with is well, Patrick Mahomes is going to get the ball second. He was going to score a touchdown. You know what? And that could be the way that Kyle Shanahan looked at it, but that tells me that Kyle Shanahan had zero confidence in his defense,
And his
right?
defensive coordinator, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right,
Yeah.
let's table that for now because I think we have Drew
Okay.
Goodman now on the phone. Is that
On the bat phone?
Drew, are you with us?
Yeah, I got you guys. How's it going, man? How you been, Dave?
Oh man, I'm doing all right. It's been. I said when I thought you were up on the video feed that it's been a minute, and it has been a minute. It was good to see your face for a second. Just you're still rolling there, man. How many years has it been now for you with the Rockies?
This will be year 23.
Wow. 23 years.
Yeah.
That's a nice long run, my friend. And you're one of the great voices in the game, and it's always a pleasure to listen to you. And we're basically having you on. We're doing a spring training preview with every team, going through every city. And we started yesterday with the Diamondbacks, who of course ended up being the last team standing in the National League. And the Rockies were one of the first teams eliminated from postseason contention last year in the National League. So we're asking everybody the same three questions, Drew. And the first one is, as they start camp, what is the biggest storyline in your mind for this team?
I think to continue on their youth movement would be the storyline, and it wouldn't be specific to one player. I think we saw a couple of young guys emerge last year among several that got an opportunity. The Rockies farm system is pretty deep when it comes to position players. Obviously, the game has always been about pitching. There are some guys that are intriguing coming along pitching wise, but they suffered a lot of injuries last year. They had 3 of their top 4 prospects, believe it or not, have to undergo Tommy John surgery. So the general answer to that question is to see more young guys who are knocking at the door of the big league to come up and hopefully be impactful, which ultimately will affect the one loss column.
Hey, Drew, I'm a big Chris Bryant guy. I'm a Cub fan. He was an MVP guy. He had a great stretch there. He goes to the Giants, has a short but good run with the Giants, and now he seems like he's become non-existent. What is happening with Chris Bryant and his effectiveness since he's gone to the Rockies?
He's got to get on the field. That's number one. He's been there for 2 years. He played 42 games his first year. He played 80 games last year. So he's played, 122 out of a potential 334 games. If I'm doing my math right, excuse me. And so that's number one. He's got to get on the field. He's had a myriad of different injuries. I think he still gives you a good at bat. He still can be impactful. I don't think he's the same guy that you rooted for several years ago with the Cubs when he was an MVP and when he was part of a championship team in Chicago on the north side. I do still think that he can, again, be somewhere in the middle of the order guy. But the number one thing for Chris, and he's acknowledged that, is he's got to get past some of these injuries that have derailed him the last couple of years. And it always becomes a little more difficult the further you move into the 30s. That's just the natural evolution with professional athletes. But hopefully Chris, can be out there for 135, 140 games this year, and I think he'll still put together, a solid season with solid numbers if that's the case.
Let's hope that happens, and let's say that it does for the Rockies. And if this is a team that's trying to work that pipeline and get the younger guys up and get them opportunities, even if Chris Bryant is healthy and able to play, where does he fit in for the Rockies for an organization that wants to get younger?
Are you talking about positionally or long term?
Maybe either way. I mean, it could be positionally, and it could be where he just fits within the system of what they're trying to do. And the answer could be, boy, they'd love for him to get smoking hot and then deal him back to the Cubs or something like that, who have a bunch of young guys.
Yeah, I mean, he has a big contract, and he's in the third year of a 7-year deal, which I think it was 182 million, somewhere around that figure. So there's a lot of years left and a lot of money left. He positionally will most likely play first, though he probably will get a little bit of time in the outfield and a little bit of time at DH. But yes, the Rockies are trying to transition to the next wave of players. And, Dave probably remembers this. When the Rockies went to the World Series in '07, it was a wave of young guys that were added to basically Todd Helton. And so, I think that's the goal. And, Chris Bryant, in all likelihood, probably is not going anywhere. The only other, long-term veteran on the club, fellas, is Charlie Blackmon. Charlie, is in his age 38 season and signed a one-year deal to come back this year. He's one of the all-time Rockies. He still gives them a good at-bat. But those are your two guys that are a little bit longer in the tooth, if you will. And then, virtually everyone else, maybe save a Ryan McMahon and Elias Diaz behind the plate, are part of the youth movement.
We're with Drew Goodman, the Colorado Rockies TV play-by-play announcer. Has been doing it so well for such a long time. Drew, our second boilerplate question we're asking everybody, and I'm going to preface this by telling you we did something similar going into NFL training camps, and two of the teams that I asked this question to were people who covered the Houston Texans and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they both laughed, and both of their teams had good runs. So anything is possible. So finish this sentence. The Colorado Rockies will win the World Series if.
Oh, now, Dave, listen, I want to be the eternal optimist, but I do have a degree of realism, and it's not to be cynical. I mean, I think if you ask, from Dick Monfort, the owner, to Billy Smith, the general manager, on down, that this is a process. I mean, that would be one of the great sports stories in recent memory, just because they're still building, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, most teams go through building processes. I think you can go through any league and you can realistically say, hey, that team is not ready to win a championship just yet, and there's going to be many, many more teams that fall in that category than teams that are ready to, like we just watched Kansas City. And, you guys are talking a lot about the NFL. Naturally, we all are, right? So next year you can go, okay, Baltimore, certainly a candidate, the 49ers, a candidate, the Chiefs. We know those teams. And so for the Rockies, it would take several really good stories on the mound where guys really emerged, some young guys, and pitched, exceptionally well. And some of these young guys that we talked about from a position player standpoint blossomed, in a hurry. And it would be, seriously, it'd be one of the great sports stories in recent memory. And it's not to dismiss or disparage where the Rockies are, but they're still early on in the process of building. So that would be my long-winded answer to that question. But it would be fun if it happened, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, no doubt. Realistically, Drew, though, what is the high water mark for this team? I mean, are you hoping 500 and maybe be still in the hunt for a wild card in the final month of the season?
Well, Dave, again, as you fellas know, things have changed in Major League Baseball. I like that they've added wild card teams. I think it keeps fan bases involved, and once you get to the postseason, anything can happen. We all understand that. The Rockies lost 103 games last year. You can look at what Baltimore, Texas is world champions. Going back a decade to when Houston was losing, I think 3 straight years, they lost 100 plus, and now they're one of the dominant teams over the last 6, 7, 8 years in the sport. Arizona, and you just previewed those guys. 2 years ago, they lost 111, and they were in the World Series. So things can turn around quickly. To answer your question, after losing 103, if things really fall right, the high water mark is, yeah. I mean, can you find a way to be around 500? I mean, that would be a heck of a turnaround from last year. So yeah, I think that would be, that'd be a really nice goal, and I think that would, set the fan base, please the fan base, and realize that the Rockies are really on the right path. So, let's see see how it transpires. But I think that would be, a goal, maybe a reach this year, but I certainly think that would be a reasonable goal.
Drew, one thing we're trying to do is talk to baseball people and just get their perspective on the game itself, more of they call it the 30,000-foot view of the game. But if I were to ask you who the most exciting player in the game is, it's not the MVP, but it's the guy, maybe when you're broadcasting that series, you go, ooh, I can't wait to watch this guy, or whatever it happens to be. But is there someone who stands out to you as the most exciting person in the game, pitcher or position player?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And if I may, there are a few names that come to mind, right? I mean, in the National League where we reside, seeing Ronald Acuna play, even though he's not in the Rockies division, this is a guy that impacts the game in a number of ways. I love watching Mookie Betts play. I love watching Freddie Freeman play. Mookie Betts, he'll start the game in right field and then he'll play, Gold Glove caliber defense at second base later on. And now that he's in our division, I know he won't pitch this year, but any conversation about watching a great player in baseball and must-see baseball television, you got to start with Shohei, don't you? And again, I know he won't pitch this year, but I'm excited to see him now that he's in the division with the Dodgers, and it just, it's that much more meaningful, when you beat the Dodgers, and if you can beat Shohei, and I assume he'll be back on the mound next year. But those are the names that come to mind really quickly. And I'll give you one that, that's a Rocky that I really had a blast watching last year, and I think he could emerge as a real star in this game, and that's Nolan Jones, because he's got prodigious power. He runs pretty well. He plays really, really hard. From the outfield, he has potentially the best arm in baseball. He's been a lot of fun to watch and see him emerge. The Rockies got him in a deal in spring training or prior to spring training last year from Cleveland. So I wanted to throw his name in there, and that's not a homer type of answer. He really is a fun guy to watch.
I'll keep an eye out for Nolan Jones. That you got my attention with that. Drew, one last one for you. I feel like I go with you because there's the Jenny Kavnar news. There's the news about you guys going to the streaming platform. But I do want to ask you, with my final question about Todd Helton finally getting into the Hall of Fame. I had a chance to cover Todd during my time in Colorado, and I think it's well deserved, and it should have happened a lot sooner. But how happy are you to see that he finally is going to Cooperstown?
Yeah, Dave, I'm thrilled. I'll share with you guys, and I may have said this to you, Dave, at some point in time, that when he retired, I knew he put together one hell of a career, and he dealt with some injuries at the end. But in his prime, 6-7 year prime, he was as tough and out as anybody in baseball. But I felt like it was going to be tough for him to get in the Hall of Fame because of the prevalence at that time when he retired in 2013 of people just dismissing anything that took place at Coors Field and altitude. And now that there's a far better understanding that altitude giveth and it taketh away. It's why the road numbers for the Rockies since their inception in 93 are horrific, because what it does to the body, not to mention the baseball movement, what these guys have to deal with makes it so difficult when they're away. And yeah, they get some advantage in playing in a really big ballpark, et cetera, at home. And I think there's a much better understanding among the electorate that realize, hey, Todd Helton is legitimately a Hall of Famer. But going back to what I originally said, when he retired in 2013, in my mind, I said Hall of Famer. But I said, you know what? The bias is going to prevent him from getting in. So I was absolutely thrilled for him, knowing him well, stoked for his family. And it was a great day, first and foremost for him and Christy, his wife, and his two girls, but also for the organization. Now, as you guys know, the Rockies have two Hall of Famers. Larry Walker went in a couple of years ago, and now Todd Helton will go in this summer, and it's just awesome. Really tremendous Tremendous news on the 23rd when he heard that he was elected.
And Drew, my co-host Jim Kozimor is in Nashville. He's a Vols season ticket holder, and I'm sure
You
he
know
wants
it.
to know if Peyton Manning's going to go to Cooperstown to be there for the ceremony.
Oh, hey, listen, Jim. There ain't no question. I mean, Todd and Peyton are exceptionally close. Again,
Oh, that's great.
you know, being a good ball fan, you know that.
Yeah.
And I had Todd on my podcast last week, and one of the things, rather than go through the litany of questions that he's answered in the aftermath of hearing that he's going to be inducted, we talked a lot about his days at Tennessee, and what many people don't realize, some don't even realize he was the starting quarterback. He got hurt, and then Peyton Manning took over. But we talked a lot about his football days, but many people don't realize he was he was a great college pitcher who at one point, I think it was 49 shutout innings in a row, which was an NCAA record that stood for a long, long time. And when people think of Todd Helton, naturally they think of the slugging first baseman, as opposed to a guy that was lights out as well on the hill when he was playing in Knoxville.
That's an amazing story. He was Shohei before Shohei.
He was, not only was he Shohei before Shohei, they would use him sometimes to start on a Friday night. He'd also come out of the pen. But he shared with me on the podcast that he really believed early in his major league career, before the new rules where, a lefty, if a pitcher came out of the pen, he had to face at least 3 hitters, right? He felt like he could have matched up left on left. Let's say they were in the middle of the order and it was 2, slugging left-handed hitters coming up, that he could have walked off of first base and been really effective against those lefties. And Todd is not a self-promoter. So for him to come out and say, yeah, there was no doubt in his mind he could have been an effective left-handed specialist early in his career, in addition to playing first base and batting in the 3-hole. That was pretty fascinating stuff.
That would have been interesting. You're saying that, and I don't know why, but I'm thinking about the '86 Mets, and Davey Johnson used to use Jesse Orosco and Rick Aguilera occasionally. Like he'd flip them around to keep one in the field. That would have been interesting to see with Todd. Anyway, Drew, we've gone way over on time, man. I appreciate you giving us the time, and good luck this coming season. And the good news is you got to be better than you were last year. 103 losses. That's a tough season. This year's definitely got to be a step in a positive direction in that regard.
Yeah, very quickly, I think it's tough when you lose a lot of games. Wherever you stand, whether you're a fan, a player, obviously, front office person, or a broadcaster, winning beats the hell out of losing. But it's good to see them in this process and watching young guys develop. That's going to be the fun part. Anyhow, fellas, thanks for having me on, Dave. Great catching up. Give me a shout, and we'll get further caught up. But anytime you need something, give me a holler.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Drew Goodman, the great voice of the Colorado Rockies. He also did, so much I could have talked to him about, Coz. He did the Denver Nuggets for a while. He's done a bunch of college football. Could have talked to him about Coach Prime. There's a lot going on there in the Rocky Mountains. And Coz, just for you.
Love it.
You asked for a little Panic in Detroit from David Bowie. We're way
Love
overdue on the top of the hour break. Matt Fowler's going to figure out how we're going to make that up as we continue on. But you are listening to the Thursday edition of LFG here on the Tony Bruno Sports Network.
Panic in Detroit.
Dave, we got like 10 seconds, and then it's going to put us back. So
Yeah,
you
I'll
want
put
to
us
just...
on. I'll put us on a Bud Light ad.
Panic in Detroit. Jesus. All right, I'll be right back. What do we got? 2 minutes? 3 minutes?
Bud Light
we got as long as we want.
Yeah, we'll have a few. Matt, you have our mics closed, right? Oh no, wait.
Yeah, I do. Don't worry.
No, our mics need to be
Today
open,
we salute
actually, for the
you,
commercial to play.
Mr. Male Fur Coat Wearer. Perhaps fashion's greatest mystery. What makes a big, strong man say, I think I need a new fur coat? the very height of political incorrectness. Nothing says I could give a rat's rear end like a man in a floor-length chinchilla. Taking no prisoners. A look that's half street pimp, half Aunt Esther, and full-on fur-tastic. Sure, it's gauche, but you don't spend more on your coat than your car, not to be noticed. Look at me. So crack open a nice cold Bud Light, Mr. Male Fur Coat Wearer, because it takes a real man to wear a lady's coat. Mr. Male Fur Coat Wearer. Bud Light Beer, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri.
That's a dark commercial.
Are you ready? Let's do it. Live from the Tickscape Studios. Let's f***ing go.
Oh, welcome back to the Thursday edition. Coz, was that your first time hearing the COVID spot?
Yeah. Where's that from? That is really good. That was dark.
I spent all night working on that. No, that was we took that straight off Saturday Night Live.
Wow, I'm surprised they would do something like that. That's a pretty good commercial.
That's it. That's in honor of our producer Matt Fowler, who's under the weather. But he's powering through. He's powering through and still producing the show. Anyway, our Day of the Drews continue as we go from
Love it.
Drew Goldman, who is the Drew Goodman. I'm combining Goodman and Goldman.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, not Drew Goldman, not like Oscar Goldman from the $6 Million Man. Drew Goodman, and now we go to Drew Goldfarb, who is not in New York, but he is in Las Vegas. And
wearing a New York shirt.
He's wearing a New York shirt in Las Vegas. Good to see you again, Drew. You were very kind. I talked about it yesterday on the show. You were very kind to open your house to myself and my girlfriend for Super Bowl week. We enjoyed staying at your very comfy quarters there in Southwest Las Vegas, and so that was really great. It was great.
Drinks are cheaper at your house, Drew. We heard the drinks are cheaper at your house.
Yeah, just
than
a
they
little
were at
bit.
the bars.
And I just updated too right after you left. Where there's a new whole like cafe setup. I just got like an espresso latte machine. So that literally I got that like the day after you left. So
wow, there's a flex.
But hey, for the next time, it's that'll be there and waiting at Cafe Goldfarb, Goodman, Goldberg,
I
Black,
love it.
Good Black,
Goldberg,
whatever
hilarious.
Whatever combination we're gonna go with.
Drew is our sports betting analyst, and Drew, since he's been on this program, has been absolutely crushing. Matt, were you able to pull the clip from last week?
He did take Kansas City money line. I was able to
okay, but you didn't pull
figure
the
that
clip.
out.
All right, but Drew, tell our audience about your batting record since you've been on our program.
So basically, it was every round except for the divisional round that I was on, or the wild card round, I should say, that I've been on the show for. And I think that the only pick I've given that I've missed on was Buffalo, Kansas City, and I actually gave it as an alternative to a Kansas City money line, was to take Buffalo on an under, and they went over their team total by 0.5 point. So that was pretty much the only miss, because in the conference championship round, I had Kansas City money line, which paid it plus money, and I had Detroit plus the points, which should have really paid out, and then ended up just paying out because San Francisco did not win by more than, I think it was 7.5 was the line on that game. So, and then obviously for the Super Bowl last week, had Kansas City money line, so that worked out pretty well. And then basically around the rest of the league, during the round before that in the divisional, I believe that I had 3 of those 4 games picked pretty dead on.
So Drew's been crushing, Coase.
Way to go.
We should really not only be talking to Drew about this, we should be following his advice.
Yeah, I think that's the smart play, actually, is that we should be following the advice a little bit more than we have been. But we do this because we love sports, not because we're degenerate gamblers. Let's remember
Speak for
that.
yourselves, gentlemen.
That's a good point.
I do it because I'm a degenerate gambler.
That's true. That's true. Hitting on any more 4 or 5 team parlays there, buddy? How's it going?
I just got to talk to Drew. That's all I got to do, apparently.
All right. I like it.
My advice with that is don't do it for this thing you can do. But hey, if you want to have fun with it, if you want to just stack a 3 p.m. game, a 6 p.m. game, 9 p.m. game kind of thing, Eastern time on a college basketball day or something, then hey, order some wings and enjoy it. But if you're trying to make money in the long run, stacking 16 wins in one bet is probably not the way to go.
Well, I am curious though, Drew. When you buy a stock, right? You know that there's going to be days when your stock is going to dip. You're not going to get every single day up, right?
Yep.
So how do you look at it as an approach to to sports betting? I would think you've got to have that same mindset, right? Like as long as you're winning more than you're losing, you're making ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long-term game when you're looking at it, right? It's why when I talk about implied odds and all of that stuff, you're not looking at a single game. You're making your picks because you have a strategy that you're going to implement across an entire season, an entire year. And if your strategy is sound, then you should be able to beat the book at the very least, and at least beat the juice. Because don't forget, if you break even sports betting, if you basically put $100 in and take $100 out, you beat the book by 4.5% because they juice every pick. So in order to break even, you have to be better than what the book would anticipate if you went 50-50. So even if you're doing that, it's a long-term game, it's a long-term strategy, and you're going to have those runs like I had during the NFL playoffs where you basically can't miss, and then you're going to have runs where you're going to come up a fraction short. For the NHL's show that I do, Puckline, twice a week, they have us doing same-game parlays once a week. And I was 2 for 3 pretty much every week in October, November, and December. And that's just the way those go. I ended up down a few, like $400 or $500, if not slightly more than that, by New Year's. And because I've hit on them lately, I'm now finally plus money for the first time all season because I finally got a few to fall. I was still hitting at 65%, which is going back to the whole parlay thing. You can do it, but they're for fun more often than not because I was hitting at a 60% success rate and maybe had 1 out of 7 parlays hit in the first 2 months of the season for the NHL. But in the last couple months, I've gotten a lot of those 3 for 3s. My hit percentage is basically the same, but I've converted on them. And now I'm plus money. So you go through the stretches where you're going to struggle a little bit, and then you offset it. And at the end of the day, we're in the green.
Drew, the long-term system isn't sexy. I need to read about the guy who made a 15-team parlay and put down $10 and is walking away with $400,000. That's what I need to do. I want the quick hit. It's just like in the market, Dave, right? We all want the initial public offering that's going to fly to the moon. We're all on GameStop right now, aren't we?
That's what I need. I need $1 million. I need it now.
Yeah.
I don't want to. All right. So, Drew, the NFL's over.
Yep.
A good thing for us that the NHL is one of your specialties. I don't know how much basketball stuff you do. I know you're NHL and you're Major League Baseball. So what are you looking at now? What's your focus? And if somebody out there like Matt is looking for somewhere to now turn their extra dollars that they want to have a little fun with into some entertainment or try to get rich, where should they be looking?
Well, the NHL is, I mean, hockey is my favorite sport, and baseball is a specialty as well for me. It was right up there for me. So the MLB season, pitchers and catchers are there, but we still have a little over a month before we get to meaningful games. If you're thinking about betting on spring training games, there's a 1-800 number that you should probably be calling instead. Anyway, for the NHL though, we're about 2/3 of the way through the NHL season right now. So there's a lot of teams that we know who they are finally, that we can basically firm up as being, okay, they're for real, okay, they're bubble, okay, they're not this year. So there have been a lot of ebbs and flows to follow the whole season. The Edmonton Oilers in the first couple months of the year were one of the worst plays you could have made, and then they made a coaching change. The team got it together, and now they've been one of the best teams in the NHL for the last couple of months. So there's a lot of stuff that you can be looking at in that regard. There's, I think, 13 games going on tonight, so a lot of options in the NHL today.
So when we talk about the National Hockey League, for people who are into betting, into gaming that way, but if I look at the game, I would think, well, gosh, I only get a chance to bet on if the Winnipeg Jets are going to beat the San Jose Sharks or whatever. What are the different things in hockey we can focus on to make it more interesting for someone who's new into the betting game?
So there are a lot of options with the NHL, but you don't get the traditional spread like you do in football or basketball because the sport's just not that high scoring, right? We're talking about what is referred to as the puck line instead of the spread because it's, with very limited exceptions, always set to 1.5 goals in favor of the favorite. But there are other ways that you could do it because that's a bet that obviously winning by multiple goals is not necessarily blowing out your opponent, but that is a winning solidly or an empty netter at the end of a 1-goal game. But there are other ways that you could do it. You could bet on a totals line, which the NHL's usual standard is 6.5. We do have about 5 games tonight where the line is set to 5.5 goals, which would have been more traditional about 5 years ago, but now has been 6.5 for a little bit. Rarely 7.5 when you have an offense like the Florida Panthers had a couple of years ago. But there are, one of my favorite bets to look at when you're talking about those games that have the dramatically different money line is a 60-minute money line. Because in order to win by at least 2 goals, by over 1.5 margin of victory, you have to win in regulation. So you're adding a little bit of insurance that empty netter doesn't go in, just in case on those types of games. So when you're looking at a team that is a massive favorite, Calgary, you mentioned the San Jose Sharks. Calgary is favored against San Jose at -320 for tonight's game. If you were to give up the goal and a half, it's -125. So for them to win by multiple goals in regulation is -125. And the 60-minute money line is going to be, I don't have it up, but it's going to be right around that -150, -160 range because you're getting a little bit more for it. You can also look, sticking with that game, San Jose for a team under. And I looked at that. I did point that out. That was my one miss in the NFL. But in the NHL, when you have a good goaltender on one side, that's a really decent option. The San Jose Sharks, their line for today is set to 2.5 goals. They're averaging a fraction above, a hair above 2 goals a game in the NHL this season. That is atrocious by offensive standards in the NHL. I think they have 107 goals through 52 games. That is not offense. Now, Calgary is sending out Dustin Wolf, who that's a name that you may not know right now, but give it 3 years, you will. He seems to be the goalie of the future for the Calgary Flames. Calgary is pretty heavily favored in that game at -320. The totals line for the game is set to 5.5 because San Jose does not score. But the Calgary offense isn't all that great either, usually. They're not exactly lighting the lamp and blowing things up in the NHL. They're not threatening for that top spot in the Pacific right now. So if 2.5 goals for San Jose is -190. And that's getting close if it isn't already in a spot where I'm not crazy about the value of -190. It just doesn't interest me that much. But you could take something like that and combine it with a Calgary money line bet, for instance, and at least get that payout towards where it would be if you took Calgary on the puck line. And the only reason I don't do that is because the Flames offense can't totally be trusted to outscore the San Jose Sharks, even as abysmal as their offense has been.
Drew,
Let's say I'm a big,
Go ahead,
well,
Coach. Go ahead.
yeah, to staying on hockey, if I'm a big Capo Kakinen fan, and I think he's going to have a big night tonight, is there a line, like Capo Kakinen shutout or 2 goals or less, or is that just team statistics? Are there individual things that I can bet on? Austin Matthews getting 2 points, over and under 2.5 points in his game tonight.
Totally, yeah. Any individual player, goalie, forward, skater of any kind, defensemen are going to have different bets. You can find some defensemen for blocked shots, which when that pops up, I'm always my sensors go off because I'm just then you're comparing like, okay, what does the other offense usually generate? And then you're looking at their averages for blocked shots. So sometimes that over 2.5 blocks can be really good for a defenseman to take them on that. You can take multiple points. Obviously, if you're talking about an Austin Matthews or a Connor McDavid or someone like that, their points line is going to usually be set to 1.5 in a game, which for me usually means that there's a better way to bet it, whether that's picking them for at least 1 goal or at least 1 assist. And then goaltenders, you do see save lines. So you will see that. Usually it's much later in the day because while goalies are announced usually around the morning skate, so we do have, I would say about 65% of today's starting goalies have already been announced based off of what I've seen. But usually those come in a bit later in the day where you're talking about a saves line. And that's not just betting on the goalie finding success. That's looking at how bad their defense is in front of them, how many shots they allow, and what the opposition does. Because if you're going up against a team like, I don't mean to pick on the Sharks, sorry about that for anybody who might be from Northern California or living in Northern California, but if you're going to be going up against a team that does not generate a lot of offense, a saves line for a guy like Dustin Wolf, he could stop every shot and not face 30. So there's a lot of balance that you have to do with that, but those are very intriguing. A shutout, you can just bet on that straight up. It doesn't have to be tied to a goaltender. You kind of can, I believe, but I don't think you really get a better payout. I think they would just then reimburse you if the goalie doesn't start for whatever reason. But yeah, the saves option is really good for goaltenders. That can be a lot of fun. And block shots is, as someone who just really enjoys the defensive side and the physical side of things in the NHL, block shots are always a fun one to be able to take a bet.
Drew Goldfarb, our sports betting analyst, is with us. Drew, last one for you. As somebody who doesn't bet on hockey very much, I'm just curious, like, how much do these lines move? We talked when you were with us in Vegas last week about, the Super Bowl line and what it takes to move it. Do these lines generally move, or are they pretty much locked in? I would imagine a lot of money would have to come in on one team for something to move significantly.
Yeah, we're really looking at 2 major things that will move a line in hockey. Obviously, they're playing every 24 to 72 hours, really. I mean, the Florida Panthers and Pittsburgh Penguins went head-to-head last night. Both of them are in action tonight. So the 2 big things are going to be, obviously, if there is an injury, if there is a scratch that gets announced by a team, that's going to move a line. The other thing is always when the goalies are announced, because there is an expectation of who the goalie will be if they're not expecting rest, if you're not coming off back-to-backs or something like that where you have an expectation of which goalie is in. But you will see a shift when a goalie is announced that is not the number 1. And that actually happened already today with Colorado-Tampa, because when I was looking very early and overnight last night, that line was at a money line toss-up because obviously the Colorado Avalanche, one of the best teams in the Western Conference, Tampa Bay Lightning at home. Andrei Vasilevsky, even though he's not having his best year this year, very good goaltender, but Colorado's having to turn to their backup for tonight's game, and that has changed the money line on it, where Colorado is now a plus 104 underdog. So there is reason behind that. When you look at the stats for Noonan this year, he's allowing more than 4 goals per 60 minutes in the crease this season. Very limited action, but that's not quite what you would expect from the starter for Colorado usually. So that is driving things, and it also does move the totals line because that one now over 6.5 goals, minus 148, which is a wild payout to take a game to have at least 7 goals, but still might have value there because, again, Vasilevsky has not been the usual Andrei Vasilevsky, and you're going up against an Avalanche goaltender who's averaging giving up at least 4 goals a game.
Drew Goldfarb. Drew, I know you've got your new website up and running, so where do people go if they want to see more of your great betting insights?
That's dgpicks.com or drewgoldfarb.com. If my last name is easier to spell, that's an easy way. You click one button, you'll get over to where that is. So be sure to check it out. And at Drew Goldfarb on basically every social media. I don't post on TikTok, but I reserved my name on there so I could follow a lot of the food accounts on TikTok, which is always fun.
Oh, nice.
And as we leave, if you were to tell Amazon to shut everything off, do we lose the mics or do we just lose the lights?
We just lose the lights, but I've got the sound foam in my studio and the door is closed, so I don't know if I'd be able to, I'd be messing up with my audio if I try to get
told them
things to go.
yesterday about your great setup. Just he tells Alexa to turn on and turn off Studio 24, and it's like magic. So it's a good setup. We need that, Coz.
Yeah, we do, man. We do. Can we fly Drew to each of our homes and have him set up our studios?
I am available. If you want to hire Drew Goldfarb Productions LLC, I'm happy to help set up a home studio for you. A small, like maybe a 10% fee in airfare. I'm good with that.
How many businesses are you running out of that thing, man? I'm telling you, you got it going.
All under that one umbrella. So that's
good.
When you put productions in the name, you kind of have a lot of options you can do with that.
Good. That's a tidbit for you at home.
I think that would eat into my my gambling winnings if I started hiring you to fly out here and design my studio.
And that's a one-time upfront cost, and then you have a lifetime of use out of it. So.
All right. Well, we're going to say so long to Drew. Good to see you again, my friend. We'll talk very soon. And Drew's with us every Thursday here on LFG. The Thursday edition continues after this timeout on the Tony Bruno Sports Network. Drew, good stuff, man.
Indeed, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Great job.
All right,
that was fun.
We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
All
See
right.
ya. There it is. Have a good show.
All right.
Seconds, then I'm bringing back the mics for the rejoiner.
Are you now the official voice of the Spartans? Are you the official voice of the Spartans?
No, not really.
Hang on, guys.
This is just
You're doing a lot of stuff.
A lot of one-off stuff.
Still.
On the Tony Bruno Sports Network.
It's the bottom of the hour, or close enough. Time for your Tickscape Tixscape Studios Sports Update with Matt Fowler.
The Detroit Pistons center Isaiah Stewart was arrested for assault Wednesday after punching Phoenix Suns center Drew Eubanks at the arena hours before the team played. Phoenix police said Stewart was issued a citation and released. For all your news and updates, tune into the Tony Bruno Sports Network on the TBSN app. Now back to Dave Benz and Jim Kozimore. This is LFG, guys. That's kind of a funny one. I mean, how often do you hear about a player getting arrested for punching another player before the game?
See, I don't know if I have the same take as you on that, Matt. I don't know that I think it's funny. I think it's wildly inappropriate and and wildly concerning.
Of course it's wildly inappropriate, but it's one of these things where, really?
I mean, it's an oddball story, sure, and it's funny in the way that it's odd. But it's not a good look. It's not a good look for the NBA as they go into NBA All-Star Weekend, and you got a guy literally being arrested before the game. And I don't know all the details on it, Coach. You brought it up to us on the call this morning, and I was a little bit like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah. It's honestly, I think the NBA feeds more off drama, off the court issues and social media than it does with its in-game play. I think that's when they make their headlines. I think that they are the TMZ of sports leagues. And it's a shame because the athleticism is brilliant, but there's so much going on in that league off the court that it's I agree with you. It's a horrible look for the league. It's an embarrassing look for the league. But we see this from this league a lot. We see a bunch of idiots doing stupid things. So that's just how I look at it. That league has such amazing athleticism, and I just don't think that we get a chance to just focus on basketball. They've made themselves into a social media league more than they've built on the greatness of the games. That's a harsh take.
And can I just jump in? I want to clarify. I'm not saying it's funny. It's just you make millions and millions of dollars to play a basketball game, and you're out here before the game. You can't even do your job because you punch somebody and you get arrested. It's funny in the sense of like shock funny. It's not
because you're getting hard over a girlfriend. Let's get tough, everybody. I'm showing you how tough I am because you disrespected me. I'm just tired of it.
Yeah.
It's something Adam Silver's going to have to crack down on. There have been way too many stories in the NBA this year that, as you said, Coz, that have taken the focus off of what's taking place on the court. And it can't continue. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for the league. I'm not saying the league is back to where it was in the 1980s before David Stern took control of things.
There.
But it's not good. It's not good.
No, it's not good. And you're right. In the 80s, 70s, and 80s, there were different problems. And then 90s, there was a different problem of too much physicality in the game. And there's that famous moment when the Bulls are playing the Knicks, and it is just a street fight. And the camera goes right to David Stern, who's sitting mid-court about 5 rows up, and his jaw's agape. And it's a nationally televised game. It's the big NBC game. It's a big playoff game. And you got the Knicks and the Bulls throwing down on midcourt. And it just, the game was ugly. The game had slowed down a ton. And Stern then slowly and then quickly started to change things in the NBA. I think he was more of a foresight guy. Adam Silver is a different guy. We'll see if he does anything. We'll see. We'll see if he actually changes things or if he does things to check boxes, which I'd be intrigued by. I'd be very intrigued by. Can I ask you a question, an NBA question?
Sure.
And take us out of the equation as far as our broadcasting, so we've been there. If I'm talking to Dave Benz, sports fan, Jim Kozimore, sports fan, are you I would rather go to 10 games at $50 a ticket, or I would rather go to one game sitting in the $500 seats? Which are you? Are you 10 game at $50 seat guy, or one game in the $500 seats?
Do I get to Do I get to pick the team? I mean, if I'm getting 10 games that are against amazing opponents versus one game that's against a subpar opponent, obviously I'm taking the 10. If I'm getting one $500 seat, at a high at a highly anticipated game, I don't know. That's hard to say no to because to be right there and be that close.
That's interesting because I look at it this way. I am, no matter the circumstance, I am a 10 game in the $50 seat guy. And this has bothered me since the late 80s, early 90s. I used to work for somebody who went to one game a year. He had twin sons, and they sat courtside every year. And I said, why don't you take him to more games? He goes, I can only afford one game a year because I'm sitting courtside. I said, well, why don't you take him to 10 games, sitting somewhere else? He goes, no, why would I want him to sit in the where the common man sits? I want him to sit in the first class area where he's sitting first class and he sees everything. And I always found that intriguing, is that I'd rather go to more games. I love the game so much. When I was young, I was born in Chicago, grew up in the state of Michigan. So where I was near the Pistons, and they played in the Silverdome at the time. And on Friday night, it was about the cost of a high school football game, like $3.75 to get into the game. But you sat in the third deck of a dome stadium watching the game down on the floor. And I used to love it. I would look at the schedule because that's all I could afford. And I would go to about every Friday night game that I wasn't playing or I wasn't going to a local football game. And I loved those seats. But I will say this. If you're a fan of the NBA and you ever get an opportunity to sit courtside, it's a completely different game. It's a completely different game. Sitting in the second deck and sitting courtside are two different games. It's unbelievable to see what they do. And I don't know, Dave, you did it for...
See, Matt Fowler doesn't know about any of that because all he ever does is sit courtside. So
yeah, exactly.
That is not true.
Money bags over there.
That is not true, but I was going to say there have been a couple of times that I have sat courtside for
Joey Joey Lightyears? Isn't that what he called him? Remember when Latham said Joey Lightyears when he said the Warriors are light years ahead of everyone else, and people started calling him Joey Lightyears.
Joey Lightyears.
I've been down on the floor before the game plenty of times, but I've actually sat courtside a couple times. Once was actually in the front row.
Wow.
I will never know how my mom pulled this off. We were at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
And I was sitting there in the front row. It was back when the Knicks and the Warriors both were terrible back in I think it was 2008, 2009. I was in high school. Somehow, she got us floor seats. I was sitting right next to Fat Joe, actually. And that
big Warrior fan, by the way. Fat Joe, yep, big Warrior fan.
Yep, Fat Joe. And then one other time, when I was a little older, I actually wanted to upgrade those tickets that I had, and it was back when you could do that. And all you had to do was pay the difference. And for whatever reason, it was kind of a non-marquee game, and so I called, and actually my ticket rep, she just gave me courtside ticket. She says, "Oh, here you go. These landed on my desk." So I was able to take my date, and I was a pretty good boyfriend that night. But that was the only two times I've sat courtside, and Jim, you are correct. It is different. It is different sitting courtside. It's fun, but I'm with you though, Jim. I mean, that guy, your friend. I don't want to have them go to more games because they would have to sit in the regular season. When I went to the NBA Finals, when the Warriors were winning it all those times, I sat in the nosebleeds. I didn't care where I sat because it was the finals, and so no, don't just sit courtside. I mean, if you want to enjoy the game, go enjoy the game.
Yeah. All right. I found that an interesting sociological experiment.
There you go. That was for you, Matt. You're bang.
Nice.
All right, Matt. You guys. I was getting ready to pull the trigger. We got like 4 minutes before Tony is going to join us. So Matt, we're gonna do it. We say every day we're gonna do it. Today we're gonna do it.
Matt Fowler may be congenial producer by day, but in this segment, he's ditching the nice guy routine. Time to get MF'd.
All right. Well, I have a very controversial take right now, guys, especially because we were just were just in Las Vegas, and we just had all the craziness. And you know what? I believe that craziness is a good thing for 1 week, okay? Not this, just get rid of the extra week. I hate the extra week.
Ow! No!
Get rid of it. Just I want to see the game. I don't want to. I mean, the NFL is king at telling the story. They're king of repeating the story over and over and over. It's one game. I don't know how much can we analyze one 60-minute game for an extra, 7 days. It doesn't need to happen.
Okay. By the way, Matt, Jim, you need to explain to Matt what the concept of the Get MF segment is supposed to be, by the way.
We'll go over that.
Him asking us a question. So not really a question in there. It's just a statement from Matt. But
okay, so, but I mean, that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Sorry, I didn't add that last 4 words in there.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. So you're saying 2 weeks is too much. Let's make it conference championship. The following Sunday you play the game, and that's all.
Sure.
You know what? To build his case, other than TBSN, most of Radio Row is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? It's mostly Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, or what is it? Monday or Tuesday is media night. Now that the commissioner doesn't even openly speak, he speaks invitation only. That's even become less of an issue. To build his point, I mean, it is kind of a dead week.
Sorry, I'm just getting a text from Robin who's saying
You're
there's
hot.
a lot of static again on the show
That's gotta be me.
on the app. I don't know what's causing that. It's yeah. Well,
You finish this. I'm going to do one test. I'm going to go do one test. You finish it because maybe it's on me. You guys say I look like I'm on the moon landing.
You guys say, well, yeah, you do look like you're on the.
I
moon
look
landing.
freaking great to me.
But
Like I'm looking at me, I look
but
great.
You just sound hot on the mic on my end, but I'm not really
And
sure.
I've got my mic off.
Yeah, Pete
I'm
Shepard is,
retiring. I'm quitting this business.
You're
Very,
banned from the
very
show, Jim.
static.
You're banned from the show.
Okay, she's saying Pete
Show
Shepard
banned.
is saying that the show sounds very staticky as well. I don't know if it's the entire show or if it's just you,
me.
Coz.
All right, I'm going to do a test. You guys continue or bring Tony in. I'm going to see if I can figure it out.
Well, we'll see if Tony comes on. What it sounds like, because this is disheartening to say the least that we're getting this static. I don't know where it's coming from. In any case,
I have no idea. I mean, I have perfect internet. You have perfect internet. But yeah, Dave. I mean, can you? I just don't like the extra week. I mean, what is your opinion on that?
Matt, it's very. I think the extra week needs to stay. There's just too much that needs to get lined up. It's too much to slam into a week. They've tried it in the past without having the extra week. I think the extra week is there's a downside to it 100%, but I think the good outweighs the bad. First of all, it's the Super Bowl, so you've got players that are actual real human beings that their friends and family are going to want to attend. They need to get hotel arrangements. They need to get tickets set up. They need to get everything in place. That in and of itself is a job for everybody associated with the teams, whether they're a player, a coach, an administrative staff, whatever. That is a lot of work to get all that lined up. And then on top of that, you've just got the pure football aspect of it, okay? I would rather see the teams have an extra week to be able to regroup, be able to get a good game plan in, be able to, get some guys healthy. So I think that the overall benefit of having that extra week outweighs the, hey, we're sitting around talking about the same game for 2 straight weeks aspect. I don't really think that's a downside on my end. I feel like that everything on that end is fine. I didn't feel like we ran out of things to talk about with the Super Bowl. We weren't like, oh my God, we really have to talk about this again today. The only thing about it was I thought that there weren't a lot of great storylines that came out last week, probably because the Chiefs were cut and paste and they'd been there before. And the 49ers hadn't really, it was a different team, but they were an experienced team. They were a 1 seed. Coz, I don't think the NFL ever will go back to eliminating the week between the championship games and the Super Bowl.
I would be intrigued to see if they move it to a Friday or a Saturday night, but they own we all know when it is. Let's stop the discussion that Monday needs to be a national holiday. We have enough holidays, okay? We have enough days where
Wait,
people
move the
don't
Super
produce and
Bowl
get paid.
from a Friday or to a Friday or a Saturday?
Yeah, Friday or Saturday night.
Really?
Yeah. Just shorten the week. They'd have a different day. Saturday's kind of a dead day. No one's talking about it. Go up and play Saturday night.
Yeah, that's
You know
not
what?
happening.
I mean, that.
And
would
why
be-
not? I know, but why not? Like, what's the benefit of that extra day? It's not like college football gets in the way. It's not like high school football gets in the way at that point.
I mean,
Nothing
it's
gets in
just
the way.
traditional. It's Super Bowl Sunday, man. I'd be
Yeah, but-
shocked.
Used
I
to
don't
be
see-
tradition to play 10 games. Now we play 17.
Yeah, but and that's the baseball thing. Oh, it's tradition. It's therefore it's always been that way. So therefore it should always be that way. Come on, man.
Which that argument actually is weak. Everyone I think the World Series should be 9 games, and I think the middle 3 games should be at a random site and make it like a Super Bowl for Major League Baseball. And people says no, it's traditionally 7 games. I talked to Barry Larkin about this. He goes, no, man, 7 games. It's tradition. You know what tradition is? World Series used to be 9 games. That's what it took to win.
Wait, so
But-
9 games with 3 games at a
In an
neutral
alternate site. Yeah, alternate site games that are used as kind of MLB Super Bowl.
Yeah, but
so fans from everywhere.
Who's buying tickets to that? I mean, if it's the Royals and the Rockies.
Who's buying tickets to the Jaguars versus the Cardinals Super Bowl?
People who want to see
People who
the
wanna see
Super
the
Bowl and
Super
they know
Bowl.
it's one game to decide the championship. Are you going to game
Right.
Are you going to game 4 of Royals Rockies?
Sure.
In a 2-2 best of 9 series, or I guess you'd be going.
But
to
you
game
don't know.
3.
You'd have to buy the tickets in advance. You don't know what it will be, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, those middle 3 games, and then you use it the same way
Sorry, I brought it up. I'm sorry.
the
I didn't do
NFL
analogy.
uses the Super Bowl. They have their one big event.
All right.
I'll tell you. Hey, I'll tell you who is hotly behind that idea. The best agent in Major League Baseball.
Is that-
Scott Boras is hotly behind that idea. Thinks it's one of the smart moves Major League Baseball can
That's the
make.
first time I've ever heard that idea. To be honest with you,
Well,
so that's
and
been
you-
out there for a bit.
It's been out there for about 15 years.
No,
I've been crowing about that for 15 years.
Change the
Why?
Super Bowl
It's
this
right?
Saturday. I like that.
so, but you're telling me that there aren't enough baseball fans that would want to go to all the World Series, and instead of trying to figure out, well, I don't know in the playoffs if the Cubs are going to be in or the Tigers are going to be in or the Dodgers are going to be in, but I know there are going to be 3 games that are being played in, pick your city, Miami one year. So I get a 3-day weekend in Miami, and I'm going to a couple of games. Or Phoenix for 3 days. You don't think that would be a big deal? You don't think that there would be a potential radio row there? I think it'd be a pretty interesting thing.
No, there would not be a radio row that would never happen. No.
Wow. So is it because you guys hate baseball, or is it because you don't think the idea should
No,
warrant
it's
conversation?
It is because the appetite, in our opinion, the appetite for baseball
Okay.
isn't there like it is
That's
for
interesting.
Radio Row for football and all that. It's just the demand just is not there.
Oh, okay. It's the second most watched game in all of America.
Yeah, what's
So-
the gap between second and first though? Like what is the gap?
It's enormous. It's enormous. But it's still the second highest rated. It's got second most number of people watching its sport.
Fair enough.
And it's a global game. You look at all of the Latin nations that are intrigued by this thing. You mean to tell me there aren't going to be people from Latin America who know I can go to the World Series in America for these 3 games in Miami? You don't think they're going to buy up the tickets? I just find it intriguing. For me, I find it an intriguing discussion. I like to see things change. I thought Major League Baseball should have gone to 154 games, maybe even fewer, but 154. And I think that they should have changed the way they run the schedule, since everyone has to play a team in the other league every year. Everyone plays everyone now, correct?
Yeah, they do. It just it rotates from what's home and home.
Yeah.
That's
Let's
the only
even
change.
things out. Let's do 2 15 or now 16 team divisions, right? There are 32 teams in Major League Baseball.
Okay.
30 teams in Major League Baseball.
So Matt, we have Tony's not going to do the crossover because they're trying to figure out where the static.
Because he hates this idea.
No,
he
no,
hates
no,
this
no,
idea
no.
so much.
So,
he's not
so
gonna
we're
come
going to do some live on air tech support to finish out the show. Matt.
So I'm hardwired.
Yeah, but did you switch it over? Did you turn off the Wi-Fi? Because otherwise it's still coming in on the Wi-Fi. We may lose you for a second if you do that. But let's do it. Let's fun with tech. Fun with tech here on the final segment of the. That needs to
All
be
right,
a
I'm
segment.
turning. All right, here I go.
All right, let's see. All right, we lost him. He may have to re-enter. I expected we would lose him, and he did freeze. But so
How's that?
Okay. Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we see you. We see you. But
You still look like an alien.
You still look like an alien.
Can you
I
hear
don't
me?
think it's you.
Yep. Wi-Fi off,
Matt, here's
hardwired.
what I think you need to do. Matt, what do you have up? So those of you who are listening or watching, we use a virtual platform called Loopback that helps us to be able to route all the sound. Matt, anything that you have on Loopback right now where the slider is on, with the exception of the things that are number one. You know what? I actually have. Hold on. Very wisely, I took screenshot. Did you ever email? You never emailed me the screenshots, did you, Matt, of your settings?
No, but
yeah.
I mean, I haven't changed them since.
No, but I don't have them, Mike, because you were supposed to email them to me. What are your items that are number one in your Loopback?
We got output to Nextcast. We have Chrome Riverside, and that's it.
Okay. Everything that is not number one, with the exception of the return from Nextcast, whatever that is, that's probably like 2. That's the Firefox, right? Whatever it is.
That's 3.
That's 3. Everything that's number 2, everything that is not number 1 or that Firefox thing, turn them all the way down.
Okay.
And I want to see. We'll get some feedback from the people that are listening to see whether or not that has any effect. Although Angel Martinez is saying that he does seem to think that it's Jim. So I have no idea where it's coming from. But
So I've got Wi-Fi off, hardwired in. Everything else is set up.
yeah,
I think it's coming from here.
And your mic is still hot because that I think is part of it. Your mic is so much hotter than everybody
and
else's.
it's amazing. My mic is down all the way it could possibly go. And I'm going to give one more system settings. I'm going to give it one more look. And I'm going to shut it down once it pops up. Yeah. Sound. I like that background music, by the way.
Dun, 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 dun,
Input.
Dun, dun.
All right. I've got it all the way down. Just checking, but I'm doing something else. How's that?
Okay. I don't know.
I got everything down, is all the way down to the point where I'm getting 0 levels on my end.
Well, now Angel's saying no. He does not think it's Jim. So I don't think it's you either, Jim. To
You
be honest with
son
you,
of
it
a
sounds too
bitch.
clean. I think it's got to be coming somehow. The ghost in the machine is coming from Matt's end because Matt's the one that's actually sending the feed to Nextcast. And Matt's sitting there with a look on his face. We only have about 90 seconds left in the show, so we'll figure it out. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to see whether or not it on the replay, whether or not it's been there the entire show, because we're not hearing the return feed from Nextcast. And for those of you listening, Nextcast is the fancy platform that actually puts the show out onto the Tony Bruno Sports Network. So we don't hear a return feed from that, with the exception of when Tony comes on to join us for the crossover, which didn't happen today. So anyway, there we go. Great way to finish up. But what a show it was. We had Scott Reiss on today from Kansas City talking about the inconceivable news out of there. Drew Goodman joined us to continue our Major League Baseball spring training tour. We looked at the Colorado Rockies. Drew Goldfarb was on, and that was it, guys. Heck of a show here on a Thursday.
Yeah, you know what? That's all we do. We're doing it great. We're checking boxes, looking good.
And
Good
tonight
job,
we
everybody.
tape Celebrity MMA. Drew Eubanks against Isaiah Stewart for Celebrity MMA. Probably not. That does it. We'll see you guys. We'll see you Friday on the next edition of LFG.
All right, guys.